AIDER is an AI pair programmer that you can use through automation, and this week I've been experimenting with it, and I thought I'd extend the presentation system that we did in the previous video and try the image to code generation technique and see if I can create some templates. I'm AIDER. Please like and subscribe, and let's get into it. So here we have the Canva template, and when we put it into AIDER using the image to CSS, this is what we got for our template system. When we looked at the second template in the system, which looks great in Canva, it didn't look quite so good once the image to CSS had been done. Third template that you can see here looks really good, just with a slightly different layout. So in the last video, we created this presentation on Reveal.js. The infographics were designed using Napkin AI. There is a link in the description, but all the code was done using a single prompt, using a requirements to code technique that I use. This is all done with AIDER AI. Now, if you want access to the code, you can come over to the AIDER repository. It's an organization, and we've got AIDER presentation tool available. But what I thought we'd do today is improve the styling of the presentation. And what I've done is come over to Canva, and I've just picked an off-the-shelf presentation template, and then I've restyled it a little bit just using my brand guidelines. So let's see if we can convert these images into styling on Reveal.js presentations. I've opened up the AIDER AI documentation, and I've found this link, images and web pages. And the two that I think we're going to work with today will be the add by file name or add by pasting. Now let's go over to Visual Studio, and this is the project we developed. A couple of things to be aware of. There is an assets folder where we were putting the scalable vector graphics. There's a data folder, which is where the slide deck is. And I've just added a docs folder. Within that, we've got the requirements document from the last video, but we now have a list of images. So if we just click on a couple of them, we can see different mocks that I would like to turn into CSS. Now, I just want to make a minor change before we add images. What I think we'll do is we'll go over to the CSS area right here, and I'm just going to put in a comment. And the comment is just some named variables that I would like to utilize in the CSS. And what we can do from there is pop on over to the terminal where I'm running the browser at the moment, or the Reveal.js website. We'll open up a new terminal, GS, we've got a modification. Type in AIDER, this will connect to AIDER, and we'll be using the Sonnet 3.5 model at the moment. And what I'd like to do is say, I would like to use CSS variables, CSS custom. It asks if we want to add this into the chat window, the CSS file. We're saying yes, and it starts rendering information for us. Now we can see here that we've got variables coming through. We've got these brand variables, and it looks like we've got some semantic naming variables going on as well. So we'll just, let's test it, just check that it's all. So I've got the original website there. I'm just going to change this to red so that we see it for sure, and press refresh, and there we have AIDER image, and there we have it. AIDER channels, images generated using Napkin. Let's just undo that for a second and refresh, and we're looking good. Now I want to start by looking at the slides and the data that goes onto the slides. So I've just put together this simple structure, and there's three different concepts that I'm trying to deal with here. The first is that you might have data points with semantic meaning, like main heading or subheading. The next is that you have data points that map quite cleanly to HTML elements. And then the third one is just talking about positioning, top, left, right, bottom images, in this case, provided as scalable vector graphics. Now, the next thing I want to do, and this is where we'll use AIDER, is I want to add 3 more templates, and these are the look and feels that I want to work with. Now I'd like to use AIDER to extract the data that's in these images and add it to the templates here. So we got template 1, 2, and 3. They actually represent slides. This is more the template definition. And I want to create template 4, 5, and 6 as data and slides. So what we'll do is we'll come down to AIDER, and how about we say, can you add a new slide to, and what we need to do is put in the file name, it's the JSON new. Can you add a new slide to slides new, call it template 4, and use this image to find the data, and we'll just put in 1, and there's the image that we want, and we'll press yes. So it started adding the concept of a template 4, and let's see what it's done here. We've got template 4, social media strategy, and okay, this looks good. Now, I'm not sure whether I wanted to do that as 2 fields or 1 that wraps, but I think we'll leave it at that for now. We'll try with the second image. We'll say, can you add a new slide to template 5 using slide new, and use 2.jpg. We'll say yes. And hopefully what will happen is we'll see today's presentation, main topic, and then a bullet list. And all of this is meant to go in here. So there's all the information. It's come through. We've got this image being referenced, which, well, we'll leave that there the way it is. And here we are on to template number 6, which is using our third image. We'll let that go through and see what happens. Now, this is obviously not the image I want to use, but there was an image on the page. So the fact that it found that is also pretty handy. So if we look at this, we've got a name and a title. That's looking good. We've got position and description based as roles, and then we've got an image again. So AIDER is excellent at reading the images just to capture the data, and it's formatted it into the JSON document, just following the patterns that we've used before. Now we've got our updated slide definition file. There's 6 different slides, all using a unique template, and you can see an image down below of the last presentation we did. Now that used a different structure, and this is the structure here. We've got a H1, a H2, and then we've got this scalable vector graphic going on. At the bottom, there's other slides going on, and we can see the code. Now what we need to do before we get started is rewrite all of this code, because we have rewritten the JSON structure, and it now needs to support this modularized templating system. So what we'll do is we'll just take a copy of this information. So what I've done is pre-prepared a requirements document, and we're just going to say, can you update it with the following JSON? It needs to add 3 new template files, and we're going to paste everything in, and then we're just going to let it do its job. Now let's talk through what it's doing. The provided code samples are not mandatory to use. The reason for this is that I've done all this in Canvas. It's a great system, but I do want AIDER to write the code the way it thinks. It shouldn't be constrained by what I've given it. I've basically told it it needs a template class for each template that we're doing, plus a base class, and that there'll be a presentation. I've also described the data structure, and so a lot of this requirements is in very human readable format that you could just give to a developer. We got the first 3 that I'd already set up manually, and we got the 4 new ones being added here. If we look at the base template class as an example, if we go down to template 4, which is meant to map a H1 and a H2 plus a footer message, and then we've got the date, and let's have a look at templates. So it's got a H1 and a H2 and a looping through the roles. Finally, there's also an image. And then at the bottom, we've got this presentation class. So this is going to be the requirements document that we're going to feed to AIDER. So we'll just click on this little button here. Now I've put the requirements document into a file called to create presentation class. Now number 1 is from the previous video where we built the Reveal.js presentation system. One of the things I'd run into a few problems was trying to add it into the chat interface. So we'll just add right now, and I think it's going to work. We'll just go to, and we've got the file name there. Now the reason I was having issues adding files was that they'd been added to VS Code, but they hadn't been committed. So make sure it's committed if you want to see it work within AIDER. So from here, let's test it out. So I've said, can you recreate? And we'll just go with presentation. This is an example of where it doesn't find the right document. So I'm just going to grab the relative link to this file, and let's see what happens. It's adding the presentation.js to the chat. And hopefully we're going to get a bunch of new code written right here. So it's reported that it's added a base template class. We've got a presentation builder replacement by presentation class. We've got slide rendering and initialization code changed. And just so you know, you can also see the cost. So that's costing 4 cents at the moment. And if we look through the code, we've got a template 1 to, let's go down to about 4 where we remember what they were like. We've got number 6 was a complex one. So we've got a H1 or H2, we've got an image, and we've got the position and description inside of a loop. We can see the presentation code going on here. One minor change that I'm going to do myself is that it should be pointing to slides new. So let's just change that to new. I will hit save. Now, before we go through the changes that the code's created for the presentation, let's look at the original presentation. And this was done in the previous video. And one of the things that emphasizes is the use of infographics. In this case, I'm using Napkin AI to generate them. There's a link in the description, and we can see this all coming together. It looked good. Let's see where we are now. So we go over to the new presentation, and the first 3 slides that we got were the ones that I generated when I was first creating the requirements document. And one of the interesting edge cases I wanted to deal with was images in 4 quadrants. So we got the 4 images being shown. They will need to be positioned. But then we move on to the 3 slides that were created from the mocks. So we got the first one, the second one, you can see part of the image from that mock down below, and it's pulled it in because this particular mock had an image and it just happened to use the mock as the example. But otherwise, the rest of the data came from this slide deck, and we can see it here. We got Byron, we got CEO of, and that's coming from this information here, followed by the repeating groups, which were social media strategist and marketing expert. So the structure of our presentation looks to be working okay. Now we're about to start styling our slides using the mocks, but before we do, we've got a little bit of setup. So we can see over here on the right that we've got all the CSS classes for Reveal.js all set up and ready to go. And that's what we've been using throughout. We've also got our branding colors coming through. Now, if we look over here, we've got all these HTML templates that we've set up for each of the slide, but what we don't have is a CSS selector that we can target in on. Now I'm going to try the AIDER watch files technique. I've had a few issues with this. This doesn't always work for me, but we'll see what we get. And I'm just going to put in a comment and paste in this prompt. Can you make sure that the template HTML includes a template number class for each section? Now the important thing to do here is just say AI. We'll also put in an exclamation mark, and I hit save. And it looks like it might be working through this particular request. So if everything works okay, I'm hoping to see a template 1, 2, and 3 over here. So let's see what's happening here. We've got class template 1, template 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So perfect. Now it worked okay for code. Let's see what happens with CSS. Now we have our custom CSS file. It's all got standard reveal sort of formatting going on. I'd like to add some templates to the bottom here. So let's just put in a CSS comment. We'll go like that and we'll paste in. Can you update with placeholders for template 1 to 6 using AI? Now I'll hit save. And one of the things I notice is that in this particular situation, nothing changes. When you read the documentation, it says that it's looking for hashes or slashes at the beginning of a line. So what I'll do is I'll just put this in and just see if this is good enough. Now it's not, and we'll try the hash just for good measure. And we'll cut this out and press save and go, let's do it differently and say, can you update custom CSS with, and we'll just paste it in, and hopefully we'll get the changes this way. So we can see all the changes starting to come through at the moment. And so it's put in a lot of CSS. This is actually not what I wanted because I really only wanted some starter placeholders, but I think since it's done it, we should at least test it out. So here's a side-by-side comparison. On the left, we've got the older version and we've got the newer version on the right. So we'll just move forward, and old and the new one is just looking a little bit different. We've got this gradient effect going on right here. We'll go and have a look at these images. We want to see them in 4 quadrants, and that seems to be working okay. We move on to the 4th one, and it's just a little bit different look and feel. In fact, this looks good. This is meant to be a footer. So the basic changes are looking pretty good to me. And if we move on to the 6th one, what do we get? This looks quite a bit different. In fact, this is nice that it's showing the image in a circle. Now, the reality is this is not following the mocks, but this is a pretty good starting point for our styling for each of the different templates. So here's the first design that we want to work with. We've got 1.jpg and we're member template number 4 so that it looks like, and we'll just type in 1.jpg and we'll press enter and see what happens. So we've got changes coming through for template 4. There's a fair few coming in, and it's told us what it's done, including the split color design. Let's go see how it looks. So here we have the old, which I really like. Let's go look at the new, and the new is looking very close to the mock, except for 2 things. We've got this social media heading 1, which should just be above the line here, and this strategy should definitely be down below. So I've taken a screenshot of the current example, and I've said the H1 should be slightly higher and not overlapping the brown area, and the H2 should be the same size as the H1, and it should be over the brown area. So I've just taken a screenshot of this particular page, and I'll just see if I can paste it in. Now that's not working, so there's a bit of confusion about how to use this. Oh, bloody hell. So moving on to mock number 2, we've got it over here on the right, and it's mapping to template number 5. So we'll just put in, can you update template 5 in custom CSS so that it looks like, and we'll just put in 2.jpg and press enter. It'll add it to the chat, and it seems to have hung. So one of the things you might have noticed is that there's been a few different bugs that I'm dealing with as I'm working with AIDER. So there's still some areas of improvement just in the basic usability. So what I think we'll do is we'll just cut this all the way out and start again. So new setup, and we'll just say 2.jpg, and that's looking good. We'll say yes, and we'll say yes. So that added in the custom CSS and added in the JPEG, and the code that we're hoping will change is just in here. We can see it coming through at the moment, and it's about to change right now, I'm assuming. Look at that. There's another thing to be aware of. If you change things here, you might have a little bit of conflict. So if I hit save, yeah, let's just remove that altogether. And now we do have a complete set of changes to template 5. Highlighting yet another challenge to be aware of is that if you have left some edits in some code, but you haven't saved it, then it's going to cause a little bit of a conflict when AIDER starts generating code. So here we have a few problems. It's getting close. One of the things it's done is it's missed the main topic, so we need to get that in, and everything should be on the right and vertical, so we can see today's presentation in the middle, and we've got the bullet points here. Also, I think just the graphics itself with this little yellow box got a little bit confusing for it. I'm going to actually describe everything in a prompt and see if I can fix it. Now here we have our reference or our mock image on the left, and we've got the updated slide on the right. It's starting to look close to what I want, but the problem I had was I actually had to use a whole lot of standard prompt engineering to get it looking like this. I didn't find in this second example that the image to CSS was working too well for me. So for our third test, we're going to try and get the HTML that's on the right looking like the mock that's on the left. Now this is known as template 6 in the system, and what I've done is I've got this image here of the mock, but I've also got an image of what it currently looks like. We should be able to feed them both into AIDER. So I'm just going to start by adding a couple of files. We'll add in 3.jpg, and we'll let that go into the system, and we will add in current.png, and that's my example of what it currently looks like. So I'm just saying, can you update template 6 in the custom set? And I've given the currently looking image, and we'll see what happens. And I'm not sure whether it's going to change CSS and template, but here it is. It's starting to generate. And so it's made a change to template 6. Let's test it out. So here's what it's come up with in both desktop mode and mobile mode. So we can't see the yellow box. There isn't the vertical alignment going on. So I played around with a few prompts, and firstly I added in this current image, which is the top left hand image, and I also did a current mobile so it could see different points of view. And then I just told it that I wanted it to notice the yellow in the top, the white in the bottom, the image on the right, and the vertical alignment of the different text. Now it told me that it needed some extra information, which I gave it in the form of the presentation.js and the custom CSS, and it generated a whole lot of code for us. Let's have a look at what that looks like. And now we're starting to look on point. Now there are differences, but in some respects, I like it the way it is. So let's put the image up in the top right-hand corner. It needs to be moved down to the middle, and these two areas need to be on top of each other. But at the moment, they look quite clean the way they are. So I might actually leave this template the way it is. As a recap, let's have a look at how they looked in Canva and how they look in Reveal.js. So it's looking pretty good. It would need a little bit of work, but I like where it's at. If we look at the next template, this one didn't work out so well when I moved it over to Reveal. So this would require a little bit of manual changing. The image to CSS was a bit problematic with this one, but the last one actually worked quite well, though it gave a little bit different look and feel. But this is something I could work with. So in this experience, the image to CSS for Reveal.js, it worked okay. But here's my final thoughts. So here's an honest assessment of AIDER in the area of converting images into code and other data structures. Mostly this was painful. This might have looked okay, but the video probably took me 3 times as long as I expected because of the amount of backwards and forwards. Where it was really simple and where I'd use it over and over again was data extraction. If you're trying to get data out of an image, this is a great tool, and because you can automate it, there's all sorts of use cases. But converting it into CSS was problematic. Part of the reason it's problematic is because there's another framework involved, and that's Reveal.js. So I can understand some of the challenges that it went through, but I ran into a number of bugs and a number of going one path, backtracking, going down another path. So at the moment, it's got some useful features, but generally this is not a use case that I'd want to try again anytime soon. I'm Happy Dave. Please like and subscribe, and in the next video, I'm going to be continuing my journey with AIDER.